I'm Rin. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a queer non-binary person who's been living here in the Pioneer Valley for 5 years. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. Have been out as queer for a really long time. I feel like I'm in this funny kind of like in between age where I have seen so many like wonderful LGBT people who have come before me kind of pave the way, but have to live in a lot more of like quiet and silent ways than I've been granted the privilege of being able to. So I feel like I've been really, really lucky, and I don't forget that. Like I try to spend a lot of my time like thanking the elder folks that, you know, carved out so much of what allowed me to like have the job that I have right now or live the life that I've lived. I also went to Mount Holyoke College, which is a really queer space. So many of the students are gay or are trans, and it's a gender inclusive women's college. So there's like a big culture of kind of just acceptance and allowance of like fluidity of experience and realizing that nothing is set or standard. Like things will change and things will continue to change, and that's the only thing we know. So I have spent a lot of time wrapped in love and wrapped in queer community. I've been able to find that really early on. I live with 5 other queer people who are just like my best friends. I'm maybe quite used to like getting yelled slurs out the window of a car. Less so here in Western Mass, but definitely in Florida. Or I'm used to like people, you know, really loudly voicing their opinions on why what I'm doing or the lifestyle I'm living is wrong or incorrect. That it's hard for me to like piece apart what's really bad and what's just like a microaggression, right? Like I'm all just like it's okay because for the most part we're doing pretty good. Like for the most part I recognize how far we've come, and I think it's the same thing for a lot of my youth where they're like they'll be like, well, it's okay. That person's not really being too bad to me, even though they just called me the F slur. Or these people aren't like horrible to me. My parents aren't horrible to me because they haven't kicked me out of the house. Like they don't love what I'm doing. They don't love the lifestyle I'm living, but you know, they haven't evicted me. So I think that there are still so many challenges and so many aspects of queer people's lives. I think with youth specifically, trans youth homelessness is a huge thing. That really needs to be addressed. And I think Western Mass has a lot more support systems than a lot of other places do. But I still see a lot of my kids falling through the cracks and having to couch surf and having to, live on their own at 15, 16, live in their cars, which at that point, like when you are, I guess, fighting for such basic survival needs, you can't really, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can't work towards self-fulfillment and career goals and whatever it is when you're just trying to survive. So I think it's a tricky question because it's like I recognize that there are hardships, but it's hard for me to recognize them sometimes, and it's hard for me to like be aware of when things are really bad because it feels so normal and it feels so kind of like worked into what this life is. And I also recognize that I'm a white person, and so I'm protected in a lot of ways. I have a lot of privilege, like moving through the world as a white trans person or a white queer person, rather than most of my students who are people of color. Yeah, it's an intersection of identities that seem to get the short end of the stick a lot of the time. We spend so much of our time trying to allow youth to like find other pockets of Holyoke or Western Mass where they feel like safe and they have adult figures that can help them advocate for themselves when they feel like things aren't that bad. Like I can keep pushing through this because I'm used to it and it's normal. We really are trying to, one, like find those times where you don't have to push through. Like this is not normal and you don't have to be like accepting really tough cards that you're dealt from other people who maybe don't care too much to see like queer people thrive. So I think there's a lot of like building connections with other people and building connections with youth and other adults, other queer adults in the area. The main thing that I like really care about in this work is like amplifying their voices and letting them know that their voices are really important. It's not something they hear every day as kids, number one. Like, I think we're not often telling kids that they are like human beings with voices that need to be prioritized. And as queer people and as people of color, they are often like told that, you know, your voices are not as important as the politicians in the community and the stakeholders in the community, but like allowing them to like really feel empowered in how important what they have to say is something that I really care about. Yeah. Something I've been really trying to lean into this year, you know, my wonderful coworker, Jack, who is just a guiding light in so many different ways. Something that she is always reminding me of is that things will continue to change. And that's a good thing. Like, that's the only constant. What if I come out right now and I realize those words don't match later? Like, what if people don't take me as seriously because I went through a phase or went through like this period of my life where I identified differently than I maybe will in the future. And something I like to push back against is that notion that like change is bad and that growth is a bad thing, or that growth can make us less credible. I think there's nothing wrong with honoring who we are in the moment always, whether or not that's who we're going to be tomorrow or the day after that. And I think recognizing that change and growth is a wonderful natural thing and is applauded in almost every other group except for queer people. As soon as an LGBTQ person says like this is different than it was before, all of a sudden it's things are ripped away. It's like you don't know who you are. Like this was obviously just a phase, and this is something that you haven't considered or haven't thought deeply about enough. But I think it's embracing that change and embracing the fluidity of life and identities and queerness. That's a really wonderful, beautiful thing. And feeling comfortable and empowered by change rather than like shying away from it. I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for myself and speak for a lot of the youth that I work with in saying that like we're not asking for a lot. And we're also not asking for perfection. So I think a lot of people are scared to take that first step in the door because they're scared of messing up. I'm thinking about like my mom, who is a really wonderful and I would call her very, very supportive ally, who recently sat down her best friends, who are like my best friend's parents from home. And a lot of what they were expressing is like, I want to support them and I want to like express that I love them, but I'm scared of like if I mess up my language and use the wrong pronouns, or if I say the wrong thing and step on some toes, I think they're scared of like being canceled or whatever. Like I think a lot of cancel culture is kind of like seeped throughout the world, and it's a really scary thing. And the idea that like there's no forgiveness after a little mistake is kind of false in my experience and in what I've seen from myself and my friends and my youth. It's like we're not asking you to be perfect and to have everything, all the knowledge ready to go. I think we're asking for you to listen, and we're saying mistakes are okay. I think a lot of it is listening to specifically BIPOC trans voices and the people who are most marginalized. But also like allowing forgiveness for yourself and allowing for forgiveness for like the queer and trans people that you're working with. I don't think any group is a monolith, and I don't think the LGBTQ people community are monoliths. So I think recognizing that there's diversity and there's going to be change and there's going to be many different voices telling you many different things, but just like allowing forgiveness and allowing grace for yourself and allowing grace for the people that you are trying to fight for and stand for.